Welcome to tonight's In Focus discussion on the latest in Utah animal advocacy. In the following segments, we will explore how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted local animal shelters and adoptions in our state. What are some of the issues still of concern to advocates and the crucial safety reminders they have as we approach the peak of summer. Kicking off our conversation tonight is Linda Hapsmith, shelter coordinator for Emery County Animal Shelter. Linda, thank you so much for your time and joining us live via Zoom. Let's start out with getting to know a little bit more about your agency, Emery County Animal Shelter. Which areas do you service? What resources do you provide? And how many animals are you able to house?
Yeah, so Emery County Animal Shelter is located in Emery County, which is part of the Castle Country region in Utah. And we serve the entire county, which is mainly composed of smaller towns and unincorporated areas of the county. Unlike other municipal agencies, we do not have a centralized animal control. And so the county animal shelter does not direct the animal control programs. Each town and city within the county has their own animal control officers, their own regulations, their own policies, their own procedures dealing with animals. However, when animal control officers find strays or they are investigating areas of abuse or of bite incidents or of just animal issues that occur, then they will bring them to our shelter. We also bring in animals where owners have decided to surrender them to us for a variety of reasons, and they want them to be adopted. We mainly see cats and dogs, but every once in a while we see other kinds of animals too. But the bulk of our intakes deal with cats and dogs in our area. And we are a tiny program. I hear this a lot from the other municipal shelters and the other rescues that we work with about how tiny that we are. We have 8 indoor pens for dogs, and we have 4 rather large cat kennels that are indoors, and then we have an outside area for dogs that includes 3 large pens and a walkway, and that's about it. The other unique thing about our program is that it is subcontracted out through Emory and Carbon Animal Health with the director veterinarian, who is Dr. Glenn Jensen, and he's been doing this for over 25 years as part of the Emory Animal Health program. And so that is another unique aspect to the shelter in that we are a municipal shelter under the county system. However, we are administered and located in a private veterinary practice.
Now, something rare happened at the beginning of this year at your shelter. Tell us about that and what factors might have contributed to it.
Yeah, so after Christmas, this was early January, we had a brief spell where we did not have any dogs in our shelter at all for close to 2 weeks. And we went a week without having any cats. And from everyone else I spoke with, that was unheard of. That had never happened before. And in some ways it was great because that's our job. That's what we want to have happen, is that we have no more animals come in. But on the other hand, it was also a strange phenomenon, and we were trying to decide what had happened.
Good news, but it didn't last for very long. What happened once mask mandates were lifted and more people were vaccinated?
Yeah, we think one of our theories about what happened in January is that people are hunkering down with their animals and nobody was leaving their houses for a long period of time, and the animals were hunkering down with their humans at the same time. And so there were fewer strays and fewer quarantines. And then once spring occurred and the mask mandates lifted, people decided to go out, and that's when our intakes increased dramatically, especially with cats.
Now, what do you think may be the reason for the uptick in owner surrenders?
It's a variety of things, and in Emory County, a lot of it has to do with economics. It was coal was a major employer in our area for a long period of time, and that has declined. We see some people moving and they can't bring their pets to their new location. But a lot of it is economic uncertainty. We're really afraid of what's going to happen once the rent moratorium is lifted and more people may be evicted from their homes, because we do see some of that as well, and that's the reason why they are turning in their animals.
Yeah, it's just incredible, not in a good way, how the pandemic has impacted us in so many different ways. How has the pandemic impacted your efforts with rescue groups to get unadopted animals transported to other states?
And that's been a huge impact for us, because we rely on the rescues to help us with our surplus animals. And so in the past, we had a regular occurrence where certain rescues like Best Friends or Second Chance or other rescue organizations would come down and pick up animals and bring them to urban populations so that they could be adopted. We have a very low population in our county, and only so many people can have so many dogs and cats. And so we must actually get them out of our area in many cases to be rescued in order to be adopted.
Wow, just so much work.
And the pandemic curtailed that.
Yeah, I'm glad though that you are all still hanging on. I can tell that you all love the work that you do so much. Linda, we have about 30 seconds left. How can people at home help? What can they do to help alleviate the situation with overcapacity at animal shelters?
I think one of the things that has really helped, at least in our areas, we have Facebook groups that help people rehome their animals so they don't have to go to the shelter in the first place. Of course, a big aspect is spaying and neutering your pet so that we don't have other unwanted litters of cats and dogs that come into the shelters. And a big component, especially in our rural area, are community cats or feral cats. And there is a trap, neuter, and release program where people can bring cats in. They receive vouchers for very little charge for those cats, and they are neutered and or spayed and released back into the community, where they do provide a good service for some of the towns in our area and keeping the rodent population down. And so if more people are involved in trap, neuter, and releasing and rehoming animals, in training their animals so there are fewer behavioral issues, and in spaying and neutering, that would reduce our intake significantly.
A lot of good tips there. Thank you so much. You've been hearing from Linda Hapsmith, Shelter Coordinator at Emery County Animal Shelter. And Linda, thanks so much for joining us tonight and informing us about what's going on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the work you do.
We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight on Utah Animal Advocacy, Gas Chamber Euthanasia. Joining our conversation next, live in studio, is Jeremy Beckham. He is the Executive Director of the Utah Animal Rights Coalition. And Jeremy, thank you so much for being here tonight and welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with just the basics of euthanasia. What are some of the reasons why a local shelter might have to resort to this, and what are the different forms of euthanasia?
Sure. So as we just heard on that last guest, one reason is that we do still have an overpopulation crisis in this country. There isn't enough spay and neuter and not enough animal adoption at certain times, and that crisis can ebb and flow, as we just heard. And unfortunately, that can leave shelters at times with few other options but to euthanize. Fortunately, Utah's made a lot of progress over the years in that area. But they're open admission shelters, which are required to take animals from abuse and neglect cases, or also severely ill animals. It's often in those animals' best interest if they come to the shelter sort of on death's door with a really serious injury and there's not really much else they can do. In those situations, shelters are also kind of confronted with the sad but necessary task to euthanize as well.
Okay. Can you give us some data and statistics? How many shelters in our state use EBI, which stands for euthanasia by injection, and how many still use gas chambers?
Yep. So there's about 55 shelters in the state of Utah. And out of those 55 shelters in the state of Utah, there are only 2 shelters that are using a carbon monoxide gas chamber for euthanasia. The rest of the shelters, when they have to perform euthanasia, they're either doing euthanasia by injection themselves or they're contracting out with a veterinary clinic, and virtually every veterinarian, when they're euthanizing a dog or cat, has to or does euthanasia by injection. Nationwide, There are only 3 states now that have any shelters at all that are euthanizing with a gas chamber: Utah, Wyoming, and Ohio. In all of the other 47 states, it's exclusively euthanasia by injection. In 27 of those states, including states like Georgia and Texas and Alabama and really many other states, it's actually prohibited by law, sometimes with criminal penalties, to kill an animal by carbon monoxide gas chambers. So the situation at these 2 shelters here in Utah really is unusual, that they're still using a carbon monoxide gas chamber to kill animals.
Yeah, so the practice of gas chambers is obviously dying off, but you guys will not stop until it is gone completely.
Yep.
Now, I hate asking you this question because I hate thinking about it, but tell us why the use of gas chambers are so controversial and problematic.
Sure. So, you know, our organization kind of first got involved in this issue about 10 years ago after a cat named Andrea. This was a high-profile incident at the West Valley City Animal Shelter, and they put Andrea through the carbon monoxide gas chamber, and they opened the door, and it appeared like she was dead, and they thought they were putting her body into the carcass freezer. But then several minutes later, employees heard faint cries coming from inside that freezer, and she actually survived the process. And that's, you know, one glaring problem with this method of euthanasia. I mean, what would have happened in that same situation if the staff had left for the day? You know, that cat would have just frozen to death in that freezer. There have been other cases too of dogs and cats where this method was ineffective and they were dumped in a landfill, only discovered to be alive. And even when it is effective, the bottom line is that it's not as quick or as pain-free as euthanasia by injection. It can take up to 20 minutes for animals to die after slowly inhaling this poisonous gas, whereas euthanasia by injection is an almost immediate and peaceful process. And that's why the American Veterinary Medical Association, the Association of Shelter Veterinarians, the National Animal Control Association, all of these professional organizations endorse euthanasia by injection as the gold standard of humane and effective euthanasia in animal shelters.
Now, your organization and your partners actually came forward to the Orem City Council back on June 15 to urge them to enact ways to prohibit the use of gas chambers, and you all did it in a pretty unique way, so tell me about that.
That's right. You know, and one thing we've seen is that the public is just overwhelmingly on our side on this issue, so we wanted to try to find a way to visualize that. And we had this petition that actually a UARC supporter named Erica started this online petition, and within 10 days it got like tens of thousands of signatures. And we wanted a way to kind of visualize that and show to the city council just how many people were upset that both shelters in Utah County were still using gas chamber euthanasia. So we actually physically printed the names of more than 10,000 of those signatories onto this really long scroll and rolled it out in the Orem City Council chambers. And I think it was very impressive to see that even when it was printed, you know, in really small letters, you couldn't even fit it in that room in the city council chambers. So, you know, there's no question, you know, the professionals all agree it should be euthanasia by injection. The members of the public agree that we should be doing euthanasia by injection. The only ones that, you know, haven't got with the program yet, frankly, are our politicians and our elected officials. They need to start taking action on this.
Yeah, and that's what I actually want to talk to you about. And I just want to mention that we did reach out to both shelters for comment, but we did not hear back from them before the show began. For 9 consecutive legislative sessions, Utah considered bills to ban the use of gas chambers, but it's never made its way to the governor's desk for signature. Why does this bill keep running into problems on Capitol Hill?
The short answer is that our political system and our government now is profoundly dysfunctional. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's a good or a bad idea. The bill that was introduced this session passed the Senate without a single nay vote. So when the senators were actually given an opportunity to vote on it, they were overwhelmingly in favor of it. But then the session expired before it could ever come to a vote in the House. And in other years, it's been the opposite. It's passed the House and never come to a vote in the Senate. And that's happened over and over and over again. And it's just because of the weird procedural quirks of our legislative process and the fact that session's only 45 days. The vast majority of bills never make it to the governor's desk, even if they're good bills. And that's why we're turning to local elected officials, because at the end of the day, these are local shelters, and there's only 2 left in the entire state that are using gas chambers to kill dogs and cats. North Utah Valley Animal Shelter in Linden, Utah, and South Utah Valley Animal Shelter in Spanish Fork, Utah. And so we think that all of the cities in Utah County that contract with these shelters have an obligation to provide their residents with a humane shelter, a shelter that really values reducing animal suffering above all. And so that's why we're asking, everyone to please contact your elected officials, especially if you're in Utah County, and let's end this practice. We've already ended it in West Valley, we've ended it in Sandy, we've ended it in South Jordan, we've ended it in Weber County, and there's only 2 left on our list, and we can do it.
All right, thank you so much. You've been hearing from Jeremy Beckham. He is the executive director of the Utah Animal Rights Coalition. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right, and Jeremy, thank you so much for being here tonight and helping us understand this issue better. It was great to have you on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on Utah Animal Advocacy, Pet Summer Safety. Rounding out our conversation tonight live in studio is Randy Luker. She is the Rescue and Event Coordinator for Salt Lake County Animal Services. And Randy, thank you so much for being here tonight and discussing these important topics with us.
Thank you so much for having me. They're big topics for us, so we're happy to talk about it.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. So let's talk about the season of summer. Typically, what kind of calls do you all see an uptick in when it comes to this time of year?
So people are going outside a lot more in the summertime. They're hanging out with their pets. They're taking them places. So we see a lot more off-leash calls. We see a lot more running at large calls, which is just basically running loose and not under control. But the biggest one and the most concerning usually is the dogs in hot cars.
Wow. Did the pandemic have any sort of unique impacts on Salt Lake County Animal Services? We did hear from Emery County. I'm wondering if you all experienced anything similar.
We had it similar. We do cover a really large part of Salt Lake County, so we have a lot of constituents that we help and then a lot of animals that we take care of. So we never got to the point that they did where there was no animals in the building, but we definitely got to a point where there's a lot fewer, and that was amazing. We were really excited. Adoptions actually went really high for a while too. Everybody needed a pet.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I do think that animals were a great way to get through like the COVID fatigue and the quarantine and whatnot.
And just being lonely.
And being lonely, right. So one of the issues that we constantly hear around this time of year is the uptick of calls of dogs in hot cars. Tell us why this is such a crucial issue and the kind of damaging effects it can have on a dog.
So the thing with dogs in hot cars is at the temperatures we have currently, the car can actually reach, the inside of your car, even with the windows cracked, can reach up to 120 degrees in less than 15 minutes. And it can reach up to 130 degrees in less than 30 minutes. And when a dog actually gets a temperature, internal temperature of over 106 degrees, it causes brain damage and heart failure and eventually death if they're not rushed to the hospital fast enough.
Yeah, just devastating. Even if you want to just run into the store, like that's enough to cause very severe damage.
Exactly.
Let's talk about taking your dogs out for a walk on hot days. I want to talk about hot pavements. Sometimes people just think, I'm taking them out to go to the bathroom real quick because they've been in the house all day, but that can be dangerous too. Tell us how people can gauge how hot the pavement is outside.
The easiest and most straightforward way is to take the back of your hand, because it's a relatively temperature normal part of your body, and you just stick it to the concrete or wherever it is you're walking your dog. Stick it to the concrete. If you can't have your hand on the concrete or the asphalt for more than 5 seconds without it being uncomfortable for you, it's too hot for your dog.
I think there's a misconception that dog paws are somehow more durable than the palm of our hands, but they're actually not.
They're not. They're not at all.
Interesting.
They're very sensitive.
Yeah. And then we've heard about calls of heat exhaustion when people take their dogs on a hike and whatnot. What are some tips, maybe things people should look ahead to or check before they head out the door to make sure they don't put their dog in a dangerous situation?
So it kind of runs the same thing like what we were talking about with the hot pavement. Temperatures on the dirt and on the gravel and things like that can get really high for your dog, so it gets a little sensitive for their paws, but also they get that heat exhaustion. You have to think about it. We're all running around in our clothes, and we can wear tank tops and shorts and things like that to stay cooler, but they're wearing that constant same fur coat all the time. So they're going to get heat exhaustion a lot faster than we would. People like to think that their dog can just go out and play in the heat all they want, but they need to take care of them and keep an eye on them, because dogs don't necessarily think about that for themselves.
Another thing I like to research before I take our dog out for a hike is whether or not the entire trail is exposed in the sun and if there's any shade.
Yeah, shade is so important. What I do is go out a little bit later in the day when I know that the temperature is going to start dropping. Obviously.
Early, right? Or late at night?
Early in the day or late at night.
Timing is everything.
It is.
Randy, we have about a minute left. I want to get to fireworks. Not exactly related to heat, but it is related to the summer season.
Yes.
My dog, when he was younger, he was okay with fireworks, but now he's almost 10, hates them.
Yep.
What can people do to just help alleviate the anxiety that comes with dogs around the 4th of July or Pioneer Day?
One of the things that I do, because I have a dog who doesn't like fireworks either, is I just plan on staying home with my dog, and we watch loud movies, and we just go sit in the basement and we watch movies, and we don't have to hear those loud sounds as often. But you do want to make sure that if you are participating in fireworks and things like that, you're keeping your dogs safe. So keeping them inside, don't take them outside. They don't enjoy your fireworks. They're a little bit freaked out by them. So keep them inside, give them something to do, maybe a bully stick, any kind of really long-lasting dog toy that they're gonna enjoy for a long time, and keep them away from the front door. So just in case something happens, they're not bolting out the door and running away.
Yeah, great tips. Folks, you've been hearing from Randy Luker. She is the Rescue and Event Coordinator for Salt Lake County Animal Services. Randy, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate you having us.
Thank you. We'll be right back.